Good evening and welcome back to the third tier. It's April the 12th, 2021, and it's really good to be back. Joining me this evening, we've got Matt. Matt, how are you?
I'm all right. The playoff dream, I think, died at the weekend, unfortunately. You put one nail in it, and Shrewsbury finished us off, I think, with that 0-0 draw. But no, I'm good, thank you. And yeah, it's good to be back and another really good weekend to look back on, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's some results in there that shocked a few people, but yeah, including potentially the Charlton one. We'll come on to that in a minute. But yeah, it's really good to be back. And welcome Benjy, who is a Charlton fan.
Charlton journalist, not actually a fan, but my roots are actually more Chelsea. But that's who my family supports. But Charlton is the club I cover now, and it's always interesting there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot been going on in the past few years, isn't there? Sorry if you can hear my child in the background. I do apologise. It's been a mixed sort of season in terms of Charlton's fortunes, Benjy. But how have you found sort of watching football during sort of lockdown?
I mean, it's obviously a humongous privilege that I'm able to still go to football despite it being locked down. But I must say, my favorite part of football, and it's always been my favorite part of football, whether it was me growing up or now as a journalist, is the emotion of it. And you just don't have that emotion without fans in the stadium. So while it's been amazing to still be able to go to games, it definitely isn't remotely the same, and far less enjoyable without fans there, especially because this probably would have been a season with quite an excited fan base at Charlton. So I think it would have been some great atmospheres throughout the season. But unfortunately, we've lost that, as you know.
Yeah, well, you had a bit of a mixed sort of start to the season, didn't you? Did it start to go a bit downhill with? But you've got reason to cheer now, and fingers crossed the sort of the fans across social media can cheer on the boys, because you know you're pushing close to those playoffs now, and you're going to certainly be challenging with that new manager bounce. So we'll come on to yourself a bit later and what you do to cover sort of Charlton, but we'll start off with some League One news. And yeah, there's some changes to the fixtures on Saturday, isn't there, Matt? We've just had news that because of the passing of the Duke of Edinburgh, that it's going to be sort of moved over to sort of afternoon kickoffs. I don't know if there's been any other changes other than the afternoon ones. I don't know if you know, Benjy or Matt.
Charlton, I believe, are 12:30 on Saturday as opposed to 3 p.m.
Yeah, I think the whole division is. I think the whole division's generally been moved to lunchtime. I think there's just us and Peterborough game that have been moved. We're 5:30. I'm not sure what Peterborough are. I'm assuming it's the same day. So it looks like the majority are going to be early, and then there's just going to be a couple that will take place after the royal funeral, unfortunately. And obviously, I suppose we all have to send our best to. Not have to. We all do send our best to the royal family and Queen Elizabeth.
No, of course, yeah. In more positive news, huge news for the Gascast this afternoon, Matt. I don't know if you want to share with the viewers exactly sort of the news that they received today.
Yeah, saw a tweet come out about an hour or two ago from Bristol Rovers, the club official tweet, and said that it's going to be ongoing now that members of the Gascast, I think it's Max Alderson that does it majority of the time, and a couple of the others are going to be for the foreseeable future. I think it said was the wording on the tweet, going to be part of the commentary team for Rovers home games, which I think is absolutely brilliant. It's great to see that fan interaction and getting these type of fan podcasts / channels involved with match day activity, so to speak. And yeah, I think it'd be great if there was more clubs that could do it. Yeah, I was on the Lincoln City preview show before we beat them a couple of about a month ago now, when we beat them 3-0 at the I still call it Sincil Bank, but it's called the LNER Stadium or something ridiculous now. And that was really good fun. It was with Gary from the Stacey West blog and also a local journalist, and had a really good time doing that. And I think it's, especially with, like Benjy said, with us not being able to go, I think it would bring the fans a little bit closer to the atmosphere and a little bit closer to match day if they could do it. We're not saying it's got to be done all the time, but fair play to Bristol Rovers. They're doing it as an ongoing thing, and it's probably testament to all the hard work that the people do at the Gascast. So fair play to them all, and well done.
Yeah, I completely agree that, yeah, like you said, not all fans, not all clubs should do it, but at the same time, if you if you listen to some of the I Follow commentaries from local radio or just commentary in general that we've experienced this season, it's not always been the best, and players' names wrong and not knowing too much about the opposition. So to have sort of a podcast that does extensive research, etc., doing it. So congratulations to the podcast. How do you feel about that, Benjy? Do you think we should see more of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm always for fan engagement in the sport. I think there's less and less of that, and fortunately or unfortunately, the lower you go down the division, the more opportunity there is for supporters to get engaged, because the finances just aren't there at so many clubs to bring in big operations from the outside. So I think might as well, especially when you can afford to spend maybe less money building up an operation with using fans, and at the same time, you know that the people are going to care, because that's what they care about. They care about their football club, and people like who do podcasts and things like that. You know, that's what their passion is. So they're going to bring everything they can to the table. So I think as much fan engagement as possible, I'm always for.
Yeah, we've got a quote here from Joe Atherton, who's a Blackpool fan, and we've got a local commentator for the Blackpool matches. He said, "Loves how Chizzy mixes up our black and white players. It's actually quite hilarious." So yeah, he's a bit of a shocker sometimes, but we move on. Moving on to the results from the weekend, which you can hopefully see on the screen now. Any sort of standout results for you, Matt, from Saturday's matches?
The first three, I think. Wimbledon, I thought they'd get beat at Accrington, but fair play to them. I think it was Colin Murray on Quest a couple of weeks ago said that regardless of whether they go down or stay up, they'll keep scrapping and keep fighting and doing what they can to stay up. And I noticed that Ollie Palmer got a couple in that game. That could be a huge boost for them. I know he's had loads of injury problems, but that will take a little bit of the goal scoring burden off of Joe Piggott, who himself scored a really good free kick in that game as well. So massive result for them. Keeps them kicking and screaming. And Wigan as well, I think, has got to be the other one. That's a huge result. I know Doncaster are not playing well. And I've seen tonight, if we're going back to that news segment, that I think Doncaster have now advertised the manager post, haven't they? So it's not going to be Andy Butler moving forward in the long term. They are looking to get someone in who's more experienced. But another huge result for Wigan. And I think there was a couple of good goals in that game as well. I'm just trying to find it on my notes. Is it on the wrong side? Doncaster, yeah. I think, is it Joe Dodo for them, scored a really good opener. And the team goal for the third that was scored by Viv Solomon Otterbourne was absolutely superb. Again, if you see that in the Premier League on Sky Sports, that's being talked about for days at a time. So credit to Wigan. It's a massive result against a team. Yes, they're playing poorly, but Wigan have still got to go there and turn up and earn the right to get 3 points, and they've done that really well. I think the Charlton one's a big one as well if we're looking at the other end of the table, because that was the first big test for Nigel Adkins, I think, to see how far they'd come in a short space of time after Lee Bowyer had left to go to Birmingham, and they passed it with flying colours, didn't they? I think it's they've got themselves 2-0 in front and they've managed the game pretty well. The goal that Sunderland get back's a bit of a freak. You've got to feel for Ben Amos, who made 3 or 4 really good saves and actually makes a double save in the lead up to that. Fair play to Sunderland player. It's a good header from about 30 yards to make up for his own goal. But no, I think Charlton overall, and Benjy will be able to tell us more. I can only go on the 2-3 minutes highlights that I've seen. Charlton look pretty comfortable. So that's a huge result and a big boost for the running with them just within touching distance of the top 6, like you've already said.
Yeah, so give us your thoughts on the match, Benjy, because it's one of the results from the weekend are clear. Was that Sunderland train ever going to be stopped? And I predicted on Easter Monday that I think you can do some damage to them, because although their home results have been decent, they've conceded a lot of sort of chances. They drew against Lincoln, who are a good side on the weekend, against Blackpool. The last 10 minutes, that's for sure anyway. But yeah, how was the game? Sort of, were you comfortable? And, was there any point, any worry that Sunderland would come back?
It's an interesting one, because obviously Nigel Adkins came in just a few weeks ago replacing Lee Bowyer, and he came in and essentially said, there's 10 games to go. We're a bit outside the playoff race. This is just a new table, a new league, 10 games. Let's see what the club can do. And he started with a 2-2 draw with Wimbledon, which was not really how you want to start, especially, a South London derby. You want to be winning a team near the bottom of the table. And then coming out of the international break, he's had these 2 huge games against Doncaster and now Sunderland, 2 teams who are obviously in the promotion fight. Sunderland, the automatic promotion, and Doncaster more the playoff race. But 2 really big games, both away from home. And in both games, Charlton have played actually very well, which I think surprised some people, including at times myself, especially that for a team who have struggled defensively the whole season, they looked quite comfortable in both games, particularly in the first one against Doncaster. They really kind of cruised the whole way through after scoring. And then again against Sunderland, it was a difficult first 15 minutes or so where Sunderland had a lot of chances. Ben Amos made a few really, really good saves. But from that point on, Charlton built their way back into the game. And once they scored, they didn't dominate, but they looked surprisingly comfortable, which in itself is a feat against a team as good as Sunderland with players like Charlie Wyke and their whole attacking setup. It's if you can keep them at an arm's length, which Charlton managed to do for, say, the next 60 minutes after Sunderland's opening sort of 10-minute spell, and you can start to build from that, and they did really well. The last 12 minutes or so, once Sunderland got a goal back, that was very much backs against the wall. Hang on, can we see out the points? And they managed to do that, which in itself is another big step, because to get a result is obviously big, to win is obviously big, but to fight against that sort of adversity when the team is pushing back and when you've got to hold on for points, I think for a new manager, for his team to be able to do that in itself is already saying a lot about how much they want to play for him and how much they're really going to work for him. And they have a huge boost where they now have Ryan Innes back in the team, who was probably their best defender for the first sort of month or two of the season, and then had a horrible set of injuries that kept him out for the next 5 months or so. But he's come back. He came back at Doncaster, and once again has been excellent in the two games since. I think he's played 8 games this season, and Charlton have kept 6 clean sheets. So he's a real big part. And Nigel Adkins, who's typically a very attacking manager, especially at Southampton, where he won promotion in 2 seasons to the Premier League, and at Scunthorpe, where he won a couple of promotions to the Championship. He's always been a very, very attacking manager, but in, I guess, seeing Charlton's defensive failures, he's realized that for this mini season to the end of the season, he can't really focus on attacking, and he just has to make sure that the team defends well and stops leaking goals. And so far, that's what's happened, and it's led to 2 very, very important results and 2 very big wins.
Yeah, over to you, Matt. You had a question for Benjy?
Yeah, I just wanted a quick one just to touch on the home form, because like you've mentioned, obviously the 2 big results that he's had in them 3 games that he's taken charge of, obviously, are Sunderland and Doncaster, and they're brilliant results. But how much of a hindrance has the home form been? I've noticed now you're 3 unbeaten at home, but before that it was 8 without a win at the Valley. I mean, we beat you 3-2, and you had that horrendous run where you was having people sent off, you were conceding at least 2 a game as well. I think you had to go back before this recent run of 3 games. You had to go back to the middle of December that Charlton had beaten Wimbledon, I think it was, at the Valley, which is sort of brings it full circle, being Adkins' first game away to Wimbledon as well. But is there signs that it's been sorted out, the home form? Because 5 of your last 7 are at the Valley, and that's going to have a huge bearing on whether you get in the playoffs or not. For me, you play Ipswich, Peterborough, Crewe, Lincoln and Hull. So aside from Crewe, no disrespect to them, that's the big winnable one. Them other 4 look super tough based on league position.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, the home form this season has really been the crippling Achilles heel for Charlton. Their away form has actually been very good. And throughout the season, they've really been near the top of the away form chart. But the home form has just really destroyed them. And it's not, I think it's quite unlike Charlton, because normally you think going to the Valley, especially for League One, it's a pretty daunting place that you would probably get about 20,000 fans a game, maybe more. And so it shouldn't be an easy place to go to. But what we found this season and what we've seen this season is that maybe it's the lack of fans. Maybe it's just that once you get on a roll, it gets in your head and you keep second guessing yourself. But Charlton have just not been able to win at home. And repeatedly, they've self-destructed to take winnable positions and lose. And it happened in the Gillingham game where it seemed like they were starting to come back, and then Chuks Aneke got sent off and they conceded the winner. And it's happened throughout the season that they've gone from positions of strength to suddenly falling apart at home. And it is a very, very fair worry, because as you say, the 5 of the last 7 games are at home, and they're going to need to pick up results, and they're going to need to win a few. I think what is a huge help for Nigel Adkins is that Charlton won their last game at home before he arrived. So after Lee Bowyer left, Johnny Jackson came in on an interim basis as manager just for that one game against Bristol Rovers. And Charlton, from being 2-0 down, managed to win that game 3-2. And I think that should, in theory at least, give Adkins a huge help, because now he can look at it as a fresh slate. He doesn't have to look at all those runs of statistics of 8 games without a win. It was at some point about 7 games in a row conceding a goal from outside the box at home, 8 games in a row conceding at least twice. All these insane statistics that they just couldn't get over every single time. They've at least now finally won a game at home. So Adkins can come in, he can look at it as a fresh slate, and he can say, we're just going to restart. We're going to ignore everything that's happened. We have 7 games, 5 at home. We need to pick up points, but we don't need to worry about everything that's come in the past. So I think that has given him a huge help. But as you say, the away form has been good throughout the season. Now the home form is going to decide what happens to Charlton. If they continue to fail and fail and fail at home, then they won't make it into the playoffs.
Yeah, some amazing statistics there. So I generally think, and we've had a comment here from let me find it. So yeah, Charlton are the one team that worries me in the playoffs. He's a Blackpool fan. So I said you could be the surprise package this year if Gillingham don't do it, and it looks like those sort of those fortune of events is coming, and Atkins is coming at the right time. Just going on to the rest of sort of the results. Any sort of more standout ones for you other than sort of your first sort of 3 there? Were you surprised by anything more, Matt?
The only other one I think that would probably be Burton, because we had the Jimmy Floyd. We talk about bounce and manager bounce and that type of thing and momentum when new managers come in, and Jimmy Floyd certainly provided that at Burton, but they just sort of dropped off, hadn't they, the last few weeks. So to go to to go to Fratton Park and beat Portsmouth, who were 100% under the Cowleys. I mean, we've said on this podcast since the Cowleys have got in, they've not been blowing teams away, but they've been finding a way to get over the line and claim 3 points and get themselves into that playoff zone. But that's a huge result for Burton, and for me, it probably means that they're pretty much safe now. They were just getting dragged a little bit too close for comfort, I'd imagine, and I wonder if that's almost the proverbial kick up the backside. So to go to Portsmouth, who've definitely had that manager bounce, if it is such a thing, and win 2-1. Question marks for me, though, over Craig Mcginlay for the second goal. I'm not taking anything away from the lad who's hit the free kick, but he's 40 yards out. It's not like it's in the top corner. It was halfway up. I don't know if you two have seen it and what your thoughts are, whether Mcginlay should have maybe got across and kept it out. I didn't think it was a world-class free kick. It's a good hit, don't get me wrong, but it's not like it's postage stamp at all. And I'd be a little bit disappointed, I think, if I was a Portsmouth fan. That's probably my opinion on it, but you two might have seen it different.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those ones for me that he's had the bravery to go for it, and because it's such a sweet strike, the keeper's gone, oh no, and he's probably reacted a bit too late. But you're right, it's sort of middle of the goal, and yeah, maybe you should save it, but credit to him for trying it and getting it on target. As Tim, the Blackpool fan, would say, just hit the target and then you can hope something will come of it.
Of course, yeah, it gives you the chance, and it comes back to the old adage, if you don't buy a ticket, you can't win the raffle, and he certainly won the raffle. But for me, I suppose it's one of them, if you're a Burton fan, you're saying it's a brilliant free kick, and if you're a Portsmouth fan, you might look at your keeper and think he could have probably done a bit better. But yeah, it's a tricky one, but fair play to him. Like you say, Tommy, he decided to take it on from 40 yards first and foremost, and he hit the target, so he did everything that he could and got a bit of luck, perhaps.
Yeah, Burton sit 4th in the last 10 games as well. So, like you said, when they failed to, I think they lost a couple in a row just after that 8 away wins, whatever it was. Hasselbank was just causing a madness over a couple of months, and they just took everybody by surprise. And I think Hasselbank sort of proved a few doubters wrong as well, because, whatever you say about the style of football clubs play, and Matt being a Gillingham fan, he gets criticised a little bit for playing that hoofball football, but at the end of the day, they find ways to win, whether it be a long throw or whether it be sort of passing football. They found ways to win, and they beat Portsmouth, and Danny Cowley had a 100% record. Any other results that stand out for you, Benjy?
Yeah, I think the big one, obviously my eyes are drawn to the sort of playoff race. So looking at Lincoln Blackpool, that was always going to be a game with big ramifications for a bunch of different clubs, including Charlton. And I think I was going into it, I was thinking it's probably a best case scenario for Blackpool just to win and continue rising up the league, because Charlton probably at that point I thought weren't going to catch them. Who knows now? There's still a bunch of games to go. And at 2-0 up, you're thinking this Lincoln team, who have really faltered a lot over the last 8-10 weeks. Injuries have not helped. You're thinking they're probably dead and buried. They're going to continue sliding, especially against a Blackpool team. I mean, you'll know that has been in such good form recently. But to then come back and make it 2-2, I think that adds a lot of interesting spice into the playoff race, because now Lincoln could be thinking, well, we've actually just gotten a massive point from a position that we probably shouldn't have. Now could we potentially go on a run, whereas Blackpool have gotten a little bit of a stutter potentially for the first time in weeks. I mean, they'll probably still be feeling very confident, but I think at 2-0 up, it was probably the last thing that pretty much everyone was expecting for Lincoln to come back and get something from that game, considering the respective form of the two teams. So that, I think, really stuck out to me, and we'll see, I guess, how that affects things going forward.
Yeah, I think being a Blackpool fan, I can talk about the game a little bit. We could have won about 4-0 before they scored, and 5-0, and we missed so many chances. The good news is I think the goal XG was something like near 2 goals, and we created so many chances and we played really good football. I don't know if you've seen our second goal, but it's 3 or 4 good passes, a flick outside of Jerry Yates' head, and Kai with a smooth finish. So I'll be happy if we can kick on tomorrow night. And yeah, sorry about the crying in the background. I do apologise, everybody. I think we can kick on tomorrow against Accrington, who we've talked about. They conceded a few goals against Peterborough the other week, didn't they? And they certainly conceded a lot of goals against Wimbledon as well. Moving on to Tuesday, as I just suggested. Any stand-up fixtures for you there, Matt?
I think the Lincoln one, I think, again, just to back up what Benjy said there, I think, because by no means was it a poor point for you. It's another game that you've ticked off, you've not lost, and you've gone away to a playoff rival. So I don't think it's a poor result for Blackpool if you'd been offered it before the game. But obviously being 2-0 up, I can see why Blackpool fans are going to be frustrated, because you could have almost finished them off. But I think Lincoln MK Dons looks an intriguing one. Again, MK Dons, if the good MK Dons turns up, they're going to cause Lincoln a real problem. They play it on the deck. I'm not going to say the right way. They play decent football. I think that's an intriguing one. If Lincoln could pick up another positive result, you think maybe their playoff push is back on track a little bit. Any other ones down the bottom? Obviously, the last one, Rochdale Swindon's got 6-pointer written all over it, hasn't it? I think, but I think Rochdale are down anyway. That's no disrespect to Rochdale and what their manager Barry Murphy's trying to do. I've said all along since we started this podcast that I think it's a season too far for Dale, and I think they're gone anyway. Benjy, any fixtures for you that stand out?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm more looking kind of how you were saying. I'm looking at teams that either need a reaction or are looking to follow up. So either teams that are kind of could be smelling blood by who they're playing, or teams that need to reverse some bad form. So I think Wigan Sunderland intrigues me, because Sunderland have not had the best of luck in this division. They keep saying they need to get promoted, which is true for a club of that size, but they keep failing at the last hurdle, whether that's the playoffs or going for automatic promotion. And now, having had that relatively important defeat to Charlton at the weekend, I think how they'll be able to react over this next game and over the coming weeks will really define their season. And then who knows, now with the new owner, it could end up defining quite a few years down the line. So that one really interests me, because I also think Wigan will probably be eyeing it as a game that they can get something from. And so as you said, the one down at the bottom, Rochdale Swindon, that's going to be interesting, because those teams just have to be fighting for their lives. But I would say two probably stand out the most to me.
Yeah, I think for me as well, like you said, how do you think Sunderland are going to react? Because Wigan can play some decent football at times. I know they've leaked goals, but they've got some big wins this season. And, the win against Doncaster, despite Doncaster being in some horrendous form at the moment, they've got to go there and do it. And, they've done incredibly well. So do you think it'll be quite an easy game for Sunderland, or do you think they're really going to have to sort of fight and prove that they're promotion worthy? Sorry, that's to Matt.
Yeah, I'm in two minds about that, because sorry about that.
No, go on, Benjy. It's fine. Carry on.
Okay. I'm in two minds about that, because on one hand, I wouldn't be that worried if I was Sunderland fans. On a day they're 2-0 up, and suddenly that game's probably over. and they were playing a team that's in a pretty good run at the moment. And obviously that little bit of a new manager bounce, and seems like Adkins is getting most of the group of players that he has right now. So that was always, I think, to be a tricky game for Sunderland, and on a different day, they probably could have and should have. At the same time now, because they had a few good results, and I think they must just be fighting with everything in the division to try to build next season with this new ownership. So on the one hand, I wouldn't want to be playing Wigan, but on the other hand, I wouldn't be that worried if I was Sunderland, which is, I think that sort of juxtaposition is why I'm so intrigued by this game.
Yeah, I can completely agree. You're dropping out a little bit, Benji. I do apologise if viewers didn't hear that. Moving on to sort of getting to know you a little bit. Again, I really apologise for my sunscreen in the background. My wife is trying to calm him down. Moving on to sort of getting to know you a little bit. Tell us about sort of your time covering Charlton and how you got to doing it.
Yeah, so as you might hear, I'm not natively from London. I grew up in Seattle, in America, but my father's South African, so he raised me kind of shunning American sports because he wanted to make sure that I was a fanatical football, cricket, rugby fan, etc. So I've always been very, very passionate about football. As I said, I'm about third generation Chelsea fan, so that's always kind of been in my. And I moved here to the UK a few years. And kind of sent his EFL clubs in London asking Charlton, the only one. A few months after that, I changed, and instead of working for the club, I started the club independently because, as we all know, to some extent, Charlton were going through some rough times with their ownership. And I was interested in kind of finding out more about that and seeing what stories were kind of hidden a little bit that probably need to come out. So it's been 8 months or so. It's never been done. Rotation, multiple managers. It's nice that this season, for the most part, we've been able to just kind of focus on actual football. Will.
Can you hear us, Benji?
It seems like my house is a dead zone a little bit for internet. Yeah, I can hear you.
No worries.
You can't hear me though?
Yeah, no, we're good. Sorry about that. Your connection kept dropping out, so I do apologise. I've got a question here from Anthony. Do you think Hull will win the league?
Yeah, I not only think Hull will win the league, I think they'll walk it a little bit. There just aren't very many teams in the league right now in good form, and obviously only 3 are really going for automatic promotion. And Hull have the points on the board, whereas Sunderland have a game or games in hand. And at this point in the season, I'd much, much, much rather have the points on the board than a game or 2 in hand, especially when it's a team like Sunderland who have just lost. So I think Hull will win the league. I think they'll probably win it. Not necessarily win the league comfortably, but I think they'll end up getting automatic promotion fairly comfortably. I think they're the strongest of the 3 teams going for automatic promotion, and they're in good form, and they have the points, which I think is just so important at this stage of the season, whereas Sunderland in theory could imagine that they have the points, but they don't actually have them. So to be on 89, which is I think what Hull are on at the moment, having won their last 3, I just don't see how a team can stop them. And their fixtures to end the season aren't easy. I mean, they've got to play Hull. I mean, they've got to play Sunderland. They've got to play Charlton. They also have to go to Lincoln. But at the same time, I think they'd probably consider themselves favorites for all those games, especially Lincoln. They also have Fleetwood at home. They have Wigan at home. All games that I think they're probably looking at as we should and will win these. And I think it'll be enough to get over the line, probably as champions.
He likes your answer. Perfect answer. A few others here. Scoops has said, "Evening lads, Mr. Boozy, do you think it's a good statement for Steve Evans to come out saying he's happy what he's doing at the Gills, hopefully renewing his contract in the summer?"
Yes, 100% Scoops. Nice to have a Gillingham fan asking some questions as well. It's very Northern based, this podcast at the moment, unfortunately. It's good to have Benjy on as a guest and some Gills fan asking questions. But yeah, I think it's great. I think what he's done since he's come in is he's been very much an open book regarding transfer targets and letting people know what's going on. Obviously, you can't please everybody all of the time, and some people come out then moan when a transfer doesn't quite get pulled off and it falls through. But I think it's better than not knowing anything, and it comes back again to what we said at the start of the show about trying to build that connectivity between the football club and the fan base. And I think everything that he's done in that sense has been really good. And the only concern for me is not so much Steve Evans. I think it's the players. There was a lack of sort of disclosure regarding contract lengths when we signed everybody in the summer, aside from Robbie McKenzie. That was announced by his agency, but there was no announcement in the media releases from the football club. So my concern is that a lot of our better players might have only signed 12-month deals, which is going to be frustrating if we don't get to see the likes of Jordan Graham and Kyle Dempsey and Dane Oliver and that type of player live. But that's life, unfortunately. But I think Steve Evans will definitely be there next season. I think it'd take a huge offer from someone to prize him away at the moment. I think he sort of sees it as a bit of a long-term project, going by the article that came out today. I think it's slightly different for Steve Evans because generally wherever he goes, he gets a decent amount of money to be able to spend. And it's been very different at the Gillingham. He's had to go and look for decent free transfers and loan players. And, you know, it's League One at the end of the day, and not all transfers work. And that's across the board at every single club in the division. I don't think there's any manager that brings in a set of players every summer or January and they all work. But what Steve Evans did was he changed it up really quickly in January and he made us a better side. And for me, I think if he's in charge next season, then we have a great chance of kicking on again. Again, it comes back to my only concern would be, are we going to start again like we had to this season because of the fact that our better players will be moved on or the vultures will start circling and take them off us. But life has run football, I'm afraid. But in terms of Steve Evans, I think it's great. He's come out and said he's enjoyed it decent with the chairman. And I think, again, there's that almost that type of thing that he's missed us as much as maybe we've missed going to watch his football team. So fingers crossed that he can convey that to the players as well and persuade them all to sign a new contract. If not, he'll just have to lock them in a room and not let them out until they sign on the dotted line.
Yeah, there was I don't know if it was recently or not, but I saw an article that Lincoln went in for him in the January transfer window, Jordan Graham, that is, sorry. And they're going to go for him again once the season's over. Talking realistically, Gillingham to Lincoln, potentially, Lincoln have had years and years in obviously Football League as of Lincoln, but I don't see there's a massive difference in terms of the size of the clubs. Obviously, they probably have a little bit more budget in terms of that. If a team comes along, how likely is it Jordan will probably want to go? Or, do you think he's actually enjoying life and he might commit himself to Gillingham?
That's the hope, is that he's going to turn around and go, Gills gave me a chance when no one else, when I was almost on the scrap heap, so to speak, because I was coming back from an ACL injury. But at the same time, he only gets one career and he's got to look after himself. And I totally understand that as a football fan. Excuse me. First half of the season, Jordan Graham's form was Championship. He was comfortably, for me, in the top three best wingers in the division, if not the best in certain games. And I know that's a big statement and there's a slight amount of bias coming from me as a Gillingham fan, but he was very, very good. He scored 12 goals. I think he's contributed double figures in assists as well in all competitions. So there's going to be people looking at him. He's 25. He's coming back for an injury. Someone in the Championship, I think, would take a chance. No disrespect to Lincoln, and I might upset a few, but I don't think that's a step up if they stay in this division. Of course, if they go in and the Stacey West have just come on, that's absolutely perfect timing. So I'll go and put the body armour on for making that comment. I think if they go up, it could be a good move for him in the Championship, don't get me wrong. But I don't think it would be a huge step up at all if they're still in League One. Like you said, predominantly they've been in League Two and the National League over the last few years. And they're a very good side now, don't get me wrong. And they're well run, they're well managed, and they've got very good players. But I'd be slightly disappointed if Lincoln City are a League One side next season and Jordan Graham decided to up sticks and move to them. And that, again, that's no disrespect to Lincoln City. I just think it's not, a huge career step upwards for Jordan Graham.
Absolutely. Benjy, another question for you from Jonathan. Evening, Jonathan. Nice to see you in the chat again. Thanks for your contribution. Benjy, which opposition, has impressed you the most? You're on mute, mate. Sorry.
All right. Yeah, that's actually a very easy answer. I only go to home games, which means that, I don't know, I think you get a little bit of a more idea about how a team plays when you can see it versus just on a screen, which obviously fans unfortunately haven't had the ability to go to games and see how teams play on a full pitch. But this season, hands down, the team that I was most impressed with at the Valley was Blackpool. They just played Charlton off the pitch, and admittedly, and I'm not just saying that because you're here, but
they slipped him a tenner.
And Gills were a close second.
Gillingham were good as well. Blackpool, they did have a bit of potential fortune with 2 penalties and 2 red cards against Charlton, but I think 11-on-11 without penalties, Charlton were still going to get beat 3-0 in that game. They just were so second best in every single avenue of the game. And, I mean, it said it all that in the second half, with about 30 minutes to go, Blackpool were taking off their best players and resting them because the game was so clearly over to everyone. And it really felt, I mean, that may have been Charlton at their lowest the entire season. They were going through a really bad run. But still, from really the opening whistle, it just felt like Blackpool were cruising and cruising and cruising. And even in the times that Charlton have struggled this season, it's felt like in pretty much every game they've been in the game and at least have made life a little bit difficult for their opponents. But in that one at the Valley, they just were crushed. And I think on a different day, it could have probably been 4-5, 6-0 because Blackpool were just so dominant. I think they were the team that I was most impressed by this season. Hull as well were good at the KCOM. Charlton really, again, and that was another one where Hull were able to just kind of walk to victory. There wasn't really, they didn't have to be brilliant. They didn't even have to be that good. They just had to kind of turn up, and they were so clearly a class above that it ended up being a comfortable 2-0 victory for them. So I would say those 2 are the teams that have stood out to me the most.
The best
and Gillingham, of course.
That's the best goal you've seen in the Valley has to be Gillingham's winner, because that was outrageous. I'll remember that for a very long time.
Gillingham's first goal was the best goal at the Valley.
Was it the ridiculous?
Ogilvy's, yeah.
Oh, sorry, apologies. Yeah, that's the goal.
In fairness, all 3 Gills goals were good that day. All 3 of them were really good. Yeah,
the volley was out as well. Though reminded me of Shearer against Everton. He just absolutely cracked it. UNZ has put correct answer, Benjy. He's another Blackpool fan. I thought, ironically, if you reverse the question, I thought Charlton was the worst team we've played this season at the Valley. I think that was personified Lee Bowyer's attitude at the time, which was piss poor, excuse my French. But I think after the game, he blamed the referee for the red card. And, the second one wasn't a penalty, but don't get me wrong, but you were lackluster that day and didn't really show too much commitment.
Sounds familiar, that Lee Bowyer interview.
Yeah, absolutely. He's doing all right at Birmingham now, though. So yeah,
looks like.
Yeah. Quick, we'll go through a few more questions before moving on to sort of the form guys. So, how much do you think Jerry Yates is worth? Best striker I've seen in a Blackpool shirt, and I'm including DJ Campbell and Kevin Phillips in that big statement from Joe there. But I tend to agree with him. I'll go to you first, Matt. Sorry.
How much is he worth? How much did Tony go to Brentford for last season?
Yeah, we had this discussion on Friday. So Tony went for 10 million, didn't he? But he was doing it for 3 or 4 years at League One, wasn't he? Or 3 years at least.
I think you've got to be looking at upwards of $1 million now for Jerry Yates, I think. And, it's only 1 season, I get that. But he's a good age. He's got 2 good feet. He scores with his head. He scores different types of goals. He leads the line well. He works hard out of possession as well. So in terms of everything that you want and you require in a good League One striker, he's got the lot. And I can only sort of reiterate what Benjy said about Blackpool being the best team I think we played this season as well. I said originally it was Lincoln that the most rounded team. Then I said Peterborough have probably got the highest ceiling. But in terms of a performance in the 90 minutes, Blackpool were absolutely spot on from first whistle to last. And there were some Gills fans trying to blame our defenders for the second or third goal you scored, the third goal that Blackpool scored against us. And it beggars belief sometimes. Sometimes you just have to hold your hands up as a fan and go, team were better than us that day. We couldn't do anything. We couldn't get near them because Blackpool were that good, not because we were doing too much wrong. And Jerry Yates got 2. The The second goal, the first one was a gift. Yeah, we decided to play him through on goal from the halfway line. The second one I thought was soft because I didn't think it was a free kick, but he's tucked the first one away brilliantly. It's a poacher's finish for the second one, and just like they did against Charlton, they took off Yates and Kai and Embleton with 20 minutes to go because they were that comfortable, and the game was finished after 65 minutes. But I think, again, it depends on whether you get promoted. If you get promoted, then I can't see Blackpool wanting to sign him. If you don't get promoted, then maybe someone in the Championship might come having a look. But you've got to be looking at.
Well, we discussed
million and a half. Johnson Clark Harris went to Peterborough for 1.25 million last summer after scoring 17 league goals for Bristol Rovers. Yates is having a pretty much the same season.
Yeah, I personally think his I said I wouldn't take any less than sort of 3 or 4 million for him, just because who you're going to sign for $1 million that's going to probably be better than what he's got. And if not my own plug, but if you read my article, I explain why I think he's one of the best. His technical ability is at this world in terms of his intelligence, his touch, his flicks, but his finishing, as you saw, Matt, like even the one-on-one, although it's a gift, it's still, he makes it look so easy, and he's gone around the keeper a few times. He's scored 20-yard strikes this season. His penalties is at 100% this season, so you almost feel like he's going to score every opportunity. So John will know that Blackpool didn't have many chances against MK Dons, but he had one. He rounded the keeper and slotted it in. So for me, I don't think we're going to replace him for $1 million or two. So he's got to go for at least 3 or 4. Then we'll talk about maybe accepting it, because you can't hold on for your best players forever. But fingers crossed we can sort of push for those playoffs and keep him next season. Scoops has put, same as for Dane Oliver, could be another player some Championship clubs want. In the bottom half of the Championship, he can certainly do a job. I think it's brilliant, and I'll take him at Blackpool any day of the week because he causes defenders nightmares.
Yeah, my only thing with Verdane is the fact that his age. I think Jerry Yates is 24, 25. Yeah. The only problem with Verdane is he's 29 going on 30. So in terms of value, I don't think you'd get so much for him if we were to sell him for a fee, because there's not so much resale value for the club that purchase him. But again, it comes back to budgets, like we spoke about earlier when we was talking about Steve Evans, and he's had to go and find these gems and polish them up. And Dane Oliver's been absolutely brilliant all season long for us, and he was working hard and putting in the performances first half of the campaign, but now he's being rewarded more regularly with goals, and that's why he's up to 14 in the league and 17 in all competitions. But not to blow smoke up Yates' arse, he's worth quite a lot more than Dane Oliver for me, based on age purely. They've both had very good seasons, don't get me wrong, but because of the fact that there's sort of a 5-year age gap, Yates is going to go for a lot more. And Yates has, no disrespect, he came from a Championship club in Rotherham, I think, didn't he? Yeah. So, and then he sort of built his way back up. Whereas Dane Oliver's predominantly played League Two, National League, League One a bit. So, would someone pay as much for someone who's had one good season in League One as opposed to someone who's been more consistent and is 5 years younger?
No, I completely agree.
Oliver Dane, love you still.
He follows the third tier as well, so big up the Dane Oliver.
Exactly, so I'm in trouble with everyone tonight.
A hat trick of questions for Anthony. I'll go to you first, Benjy, because Matt's just spoken. Question for all you three: who's League One's player of the season so far? Very loaded question, that one, because it depends what you like in a player.
Certainly, and I think with still 7 or 8, depending on the team, games to go in the season, I certainly look sort of for the run in the clutch point in the season, who's competing, who's playing well then, as being a big influencing factor in my player of the season shout. So it's a little tough to answer with still a month or so of the season to go, but I think for now I would have to go with Shriki Dembele at Peterborough. I mean, to have a winger who's got 10 goals and 10 assists, I think that just doesn't happen that frequently. And to be so influential on creating chances for Johnson Harris, as well as taking chances themselves. And obviously, Peterborough, their promotion push is being pushed by their attacking players. And I think Johnson Harris has something like 27 goals this season. Clark Harris has 27 goals this season. And for him to help out with 10 and 10 assists, it just takes a little bit of that weight off. And I think if they go up, he'll be a big factor in that. So I think for now, he's my player of the season, but I want you to ask me again in a month.
We'll make sure we ask you in a month. Matt, over to you.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Like Benjy said, there's still half a dozen games. If someone goes and gets hat-trick in a pivotal promotion or relegation battle, then suddenly, if Joe Pigott goes and gets hat-trick for Wimbledon at the weekend, suddenly chucks himself right into the mix. Or if
the question is so far. So
far, okay, fair enough. Then I'm going to be really boring and really obvious and say Johnson Clark-Harris, because to win games and to win football leagues, you have to have a top-of-the-range striker. And the biggest compliment I can pay Johnson Clark-Harris this season is Peterborough have not missed Ivan Toney one little bit.
Yeah, no, to score nearly 30 goals if he carries on like
27 goals, 3 assists. Looking at a BBC website, so he's going 128 minutes per goal in 40 games. Is phenomenal. Yeah, if you're looking at under the radar ones, I think Dion Charles needs a mention at Accrington. He's been superb. Joe Pigott keeping pretty much. I said on this podcast a few weeks ago, if you stop Joe Pigott scoring, you stop Wimbledon scoring. He could single-handedly keep him up, but now that he's got Ollie Palmer fit next to him, it could take a little bit of the burden off. And from a biased point of view, I think Carl Dempsey, Jordan Graham, for Dane Oliver have been absolutely superb for us and played a huge role in getting us within touching distance of the playoffs. Albeit we've probably just fatigued ourselves getting that close, and it's going to end up costing us because we've looked very flat the last 3 games, even though we've picked up a win and a draw in them 3. I think it's just a bridge too far for a very small squad.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement that Honeyman is one of the best players I've seen this season. It's been difficult, not to rub salt on the wound, but when we beat Gills, it was difficult to see their players. But every time Jordan Graham touched the ball, we just went past people. It was just silky smooth, and I really enjoyed watching this season. So he's definitely one that's gone under the radar a little bit. Honeyman has been decent. Any defenders that stand out for you guys?
That's a big shout, isn't it?
Doesn't really feel like it's a division where defenders tend to succeed all that often.
We conceded 8 goals in 2021, I think it is.
Fair enough.
No, sorry, 13. I do apologise. Yeah, 13. But yeah, Dan Ballard for me at Blackpool. We signed him from Arsenal on loan, and he's probably better than Arsenal centre-backs at the moment. So every credit, he's going to have a big future. Les Smith has asked, any goalkeepers? Sunderland's goalkeeper, obviously, top of the clean sheets record at the moment. Maxwell's and Brest at Blackpool. There's been some top goalkeepers this year. Bonham's decent shot stopper. Any that stand out for you too?
I like Alex Cairns at Fleetwood. I think they've been better since he's got back in the side. I think he fell out with Joey Barton, didn't he, in the earlier part of the season. We probably need Ben for that tonight to ask him, but he's not available. But I've always rated Alex Cairns. I think he's very good. He's decent shot stopping. His distribution's good enough for this level, where it's perhaps not so important that you can play with your feet like you have to do in the Premier League and almost be a sweeper. One of the saves he made from, I think it was Ollie Lee in the game at Highbury a few weeks ago, was absolutely outrageous, going completely the wrong way and shoved up an arm last minute to keep it out, and basically won them the game with that save. And but yeah, there's plenty of good ones about, isn't there? There's you say Jack Bonham. I think Ben Amos was absolutely superb at the Stadium of Light on Saturday. I think he's one that goes under the radar a little bit. And the Wimbledon keeper as well. He's made some. I sort of remember him making big saves over the last few weeks. Is it Zarnev?
No. Yeah.
But then he went and messed it all up by costing his side the game the other day, didn't he? But yeah, I think I've been impressed with him. Really good penalty save last weekend as well. So there's some even down the bottom, and I know you can say they're probably getting more practice than those up the top. But yeah, there's plenty of decent keepers about, and whether they're permanent signings or on loan from teams higher up the pyramid.
No, I completely agree. Yeah. Moving on. Oh, Joe's just put his Nappers on the 24-hour beer gun. I would suspect if Nappers has any more than 2 beers, he's going to be on the floor. So maybe he's on the orange juice tonight. But he is enjoying his mate's birthday in a beer garden, I believe, the lucky sod. Moving on, I'm just going to try and share my screen. Bear with me, guys, because it's been a bit thingy tonight. Can you all see that?
It's loaded. There we go.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on to the League One form guide at the moment.
Can you make it a bit bigger? But can you make it a bit bigger, Tom? Or
maybe.
That's better. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So Blackpool sit top. Obviously a disappointing draw on the weekend, but still hasn't only unbeaten in 14, one loss in 18. Matt, did you want to talk a little bit about the form guide and how sort of teams are doing? Because for me, the form guide at the moment is very interesting because you've got teams like MK Don sitting fourth. Charlton have risen from like 18th about 6 weeks ago, just before Bowyer sort of left. You've got Crewe 10th, Gillingham 9th, Fleetwood 8th. So not all the top teams are in that top six. So talk to us a bit about how you feel about it.
Disappointed that Gills have dropped down to 9th, but yeah, Blackpool, like I've said, I mentioned it earlier. I said you're disappointed that you've gone to Lincoln and gone 2-0 up and not seen it out. But I think it's like I've mentioned, it's another game ticked off against a side in and around the top six, and you've not got beat. You'd back you to beat Accrington tomorrow. I think Hull, I keep saying, are going to drop into third. I keep running out of games. I might have to change it soon. Charlton didn't help me out with my top 2 prediction at the weekend, unfortunately. So they just seem relentless. And you look at the Sunderland squad and the Peterborough squad, and you just think they've probably got a bit more stardust in Dembele and Clark Harris and McGeady and Wyke and other players. But in terms of just grinding out results and putting in performances on a regular basis, Hull they don't look like they're stopping at the moment. And that's not saying they've not got good players. We've already mentioned Malik Wilkes. We've mentioned George Honeyman. They've got Josh McGuinness, who leads the line really well. They've got Tom Eaves, ex-Gill striker, who's their backup striker, who scored against us the other week. Keane Lewis Potter. Defensively, they're decent. Callum Elders is probably as good as any left back in the division. Matt Ingram, an experienced keeper. So they're a very well-rounded squad with quality all over the pitch, and Grant McCann knows this level, so they're going to be hard to stop. Charlton have certainly had a bounce under Nigel Adkins, which is great. Peterborough, an interesting one, back into the top 6 after that wobble where they had a draw and a defeat, but they've then taken 9 from the next 10 available. They seem to be over their blip. Sunderland, interesting that they're 7th despite being 12 unbeaten before losing at the weekend. So that's an interesting one. We've already mentioned how big their game is tomorrow night. Wigan might fancy it. Fleetwood are up there. They've had a bounce as well under Simon Grayson. They had a little wobble with them 2 defeats, but then they've come back and picked up 2 wins on the bounce after that and ground out results. That they're winning ugly and keeping themselves away from the bottom area of the table. Gills, there's too much grey, unfortunately, for a playoff push now. We've had good wins in that, and it's only 1 defeat in 6, the Blackpool one, but that was a heavy one. We had to beat Shrewsbury, I think, at the weekend to keep the dream alive. We've certainly now got to go to Oxford and or Peterborough and win if we want to keep anything going. Crewe's a really strange one. They're 10th in the form table and they've got a goal difference of -6 from 6 games. So trying to work them out at the moment's unreal. And that all comes from one game, doesn't it? That Oxford one at the weekend, because I looked at it after half hour and it was 0-0. And then just after half time, I think it was 5-0. You're like, what the hell's happened there? And they're not a bad side, but I've mentioned before that if they try to play one way and you stop them doing that, they don't really have a plan B. And that happened again Saturday. They kept trying to play out from the back. It seems to be the same player as well. Beckles always making the same mistake, and then he gave a penalty away to compound it. Wimbledon giving themselves a chance into the top half. Shrewsbury been brilliant since Steve Cotterill took over, and I think you need to give credit to Aaron Wilbraham as well, because Cotterill's been ill and been in hospital twice, so he's doing it from afar, and it seems to be working. Burton doing enough, have bounced back after them 2 defeats with 7 points. Northampton home form's probably just keeping them out of trouble at the moment. We look right down the bottom. Doncaster, the wheels have fallen right off. You can see why Andy Butler's not keeping the job. Lincoln City, we've already mentioned that draw. Could it be the catalyst for them to improve? And then you've got a bunch of teams in the next 4 spaces that you can understand why they're in the bottom 4. Bristol Rovers, Rochdale, Wigan and Swindon. There's far too much red. There's not enough green. But I don't think you have to get to 50 points this season to stay up, personally. I think it might be something around 46, 47 that keeps you up, because there's a lot of poor teams in that bottom 6, really poor teams. And Ipswich is another interesting one. They've not had the manager bounce that they really wanted. I backed them to get in the playoffs after Paul Cook took over, but that's certainly not happening. And Oxford's another interesting one as well. They've lost 4 of the last 6, but we play them this Saturday, so they decided to go and hit Crewe for 6 last weekend, which is great fun with us going up there at the weekend. So yeah, there's some really weird ones and some teams in places that you wouldn't expect them to be. But I think generally the order's just starting to sort itself out a bit more again. And I don't think there's going to be loads of change now in terms of where teams are in the division. The bottom 4 or 5 or 6 are going to be the ones that go down. It's 2 from 3 at the top for me. I don't think anyone's going to potentially fall out the playoffs aside from Lincoln City. And then you've got that middle bunch, that sort of Plymouth, Shrewsbury, Burton, Fleetwood type of area where they're all not playing for anything, but they're probably thinking we can start planning for next season now.
No, I completely agree. We'll move on to the next segment, which is going to be sort of the promotion relegation prediction. So please get your comments in, guys. It'd be interesting to see who's going to make the playoffs, in your opinion, because it's all change every single week. And I'll just load the table now. So fingers crossed this works. Can we all see that? There we go. Yep. Perfect. Sorry about this, guys. I will get my lovely new graphics sorted. I'll try and zoom in on this a little bit, if I can. Nope, it's not working. Sorry, can we all see that all right? I do apologise.
Yeah, I can see you. It's fine.
Benjy, talk to us about your automatic promotion and your playoff predictions, please.
Yeah, well, I already predicted Hull as champion, so I got to stick with that now, and I'll go Hull. And then that second spot, it's so hard to call, but I do think Peterborough will get it just because they have so much firepower. And as you said, Matt, goals at this point in the season and throughout the season, goals are so decisive, and they have so many in that team. So I think they will have enough to get over the line and take that second spot. The playoff race is interesting because over the last couple of weeks, I think it's really started to narrow a little bit. It had gone really wide where there are about 10 teams in it. And now with all those teams that we saw in the form guide who were in the playoff race a couple of weeks ago are now starting to falter due to some really poor performances and some really poor runs. So Doncaster obviously have fallen off the map after at one point potentially being in the automatic promotion shout. Lincoln look like they're dropping, and they play Charlton on the second to last game of the season, and that looks pretty big. But I think Sunderland, Blackpool, and Portsmouth are all pretty secure in my eyes in their playoff spots. And then it's really just that last one where, Ipswich will probably believe that they still have a chance. But I do think it'll come down to Charlton and whether or not Lincoln can get some form in this end of the season. And ultimately, I think Charlton will get that sixth spot. And so I really think that they'll be the only team coming into the current top 6. And I don't think any of the current top 6 other than Lincoln will drop out.
Yeah, Ipswich is a weird one. They've got probably one of the easiest run-ins, but to draw their last 2, not have a shot on target against Rochdale is not looking too hopeful for them. And you want to be that team storming into the playoffs, a bit like sort of Charlton are doing, Portsmouth are doing, and Blackpool are doing at the moment. So we'll have to see how Ipswich pans out. But like you say, with Charlton's form at the moment, and the way that Adkins is, that new manager bounce we've sort of discussed, I can't see anyone else getting in there apart from that battle between sort of Charlton and Lincoln. But you got to think Blackpool, although they've got a game in hand, that is against Sunderland. It's going to be a very difficult match, but that we do look a solid outfit. I'm not going to deny that, but they're only 3 points away from sort of dropping out as well. So it only takes a few results to pick up and go the other way. So
these things change quickly in this division.
Yeah, as Charlton have sort of said. So Scoops is the first one to get his comment in. He's gone with Peterborough, Hull Automatics and Blackpool playoffs. I really like Scoops. Keep them comments coming in. And he has got Hull, Posh and Blackpool up. I think you're just being nice now. And Rochdale, Bristol Rovers, Wimbledon and Northampton to go down. I think that's a big shout with Northampton there as well. But Joe has got Hull, Posh and Sunderland. Blackpool, Portsmouth and Charlton for the playoffs. Joe, who do you think's winning the playoffs? John's got Hull, Peterborough promoted, Charlton playoffs, Charlton for the win, that looks like. Swindon, Northampton, AFC, Rochdale to go down. Relegation from Joe is Rochdale, Northampton, Swindon and Bristol Rovers. Scoops says, but God, I would love to see Danny Cowley at Gillingham one day. Yeah, he's a very decent manager. He's definitely a winner, that's for sure. Your playoffs, are they changing anymore, Matt?
No, to say I'm
You've made your prediction, haven't you?
To copy Benjy, I think it's only Lincoln that can fall out now. I think the only one I might have to change is Hull, because I keep saying they're going to drop into third, but they just keep picking up points. And like I say, it's running out of games. They've only got 5 left, but when you're top of the league and you've only got 5 left, it's not such a bad thing as if you're outside the playoffs trying to get in. It's a bit different then, and the mindset changes. But I think it's now between I'm going to sound like I'm copied out here because I know Anthony Northgraves, the Hull fan, asked me on Twitter yesterday and said, am I changing my mind? And I said no. But I did say Peterborough and Sunderland automatic, but it's looking more unlikely that Hull are going to fall out. But in terms of the playoffs, I can't see it being anyone other than Lincoln falling out, if anyone at all. And I think over the next couple of games that Lincoln play, we'll see how they've reacted. Yes, the Blackpool point's decent, but they've got to back it up. If they get beat in their next game Tuesday, then I think they might be back to square one, so to speak, and they could drop out by the weekend. And then it's hard to get back in, isn't it, with all the injuries they've had and the COVID problems. And don't ask me about relegation because I'm not talking about that, because apart from Rochdale, it's impossible to pick because Wimbledon went and scored 5 at the weekend, and Wigan went to Doncaster and scored 4, and Bristol Rovers beat Donny last week and then picked up a point. I know the Bristol Rovers fans were quite downbeat after that, but I didn't think it was a bad point away from home. It keeps them in and around it, and if they can win a home game, that gets them over the right side of the line. I wasn't sure why everyone was so despondent, but then I suppose that's probably because I'm not had to watch them all season.
I think based on their decent, they went 1-0 up, and I don't know if you've seen the.
It wasn't a penalty.
Yeah,
was it? I don't know what your thoughts are, Benji. Have you seen it? For me, it's never a penalty in a million years.
I haven't actually seen it.
For
me, it's a foul and it's a free kick to Bristol Rovers.
Yeah, I think that's why they're so annoyed. But they then took that out on the fact that they've dropped points again, and that it turned a bit not sour or bitter, not sort of angry, but it was a sense of if they came away 1-0 and that sort of sequence of events didn't happen, then you're jumping for joy. And I think they're just a bit fed up of the complacency of conceding goals. And we all know Joey Barton's been blaming referees every single time they don't win, and when they do win, it's his team that have done a good job. So I won't ask Matt about relegation then, because he's avoided sort of making the call.
I don't talk about it now.
Benji, did you say your relegation? Or
I didn't actually. Maybe I was trying to. It's so tough, because when there's 3 points separating the bottom 5 or whatever it is just is so challenging. I mean, Rochdale are the easiest to call, and I have got to go with them as one of the teams. I think Wimbledon will stay up, having seen the 2-2 draw with Charlton at their stadium, and then obviously having their huge win this past weekend. I think they've got enough momentum to stay up, which then at that point, I guess, makes it 4 of the next 5. And I think it'll be Rochdale, Swindon, Bristol Rovers, and Wigan. I think it'll be the current bottom 4 that go down.
I'll make a call. I think it's Rochdale, Swindon, Bristol Rovers, and Northampton. The reason I say that is Northampton's running is equally as bad as Wigan's, and if you look at it, it's absolutely horrendous. I think they've got to play Portsmouth, potentially. They've got to play Blackpool. They've got to play a few teams. I think Sunderland potentially as well. So both of those have got to play those big 3. And as Matt said in the chat somewhere above, that the bottom 6 are going to have a massive sort of impact on the playoffs as well, because it doesn't mean they're automatically losses. Of course, that Northampton have got a bad run in, but as Wigan showed on the weekend against a hopeless sort of Doncaster. But yeah, it's a difficult one in terms of calling that, but I just think the quality come the end of the season when it really matters. I think that's where the top 6 will show their teeth a little bit more, and that quality of investment, etc., as we've seen with teams in that top 6 over teams in the bottom, just makes all the difference in the end. So for me, that's why Northampton, Wigan, Rochdale, Swindon, Bristol Rovers, and Northampton.
It's not that easy, is it?
I just named 6 to go down, then I can't get it wrong.
I've just looked at the Northampton's final 5 is absolutely horrendous. They go to Peterborough, then they host Ipswich, then they go to Gillingham, then they host Blackpool, and then they finish up at the Stadium of Light.
Oh, I might want to change my prediction.
That's awful, isn't it?
Yeah, that is.
I said their home form is what's kept them fighting. So you'd think they've probably got to get something against Ipswich and or Blackpool to give themselves a chance. And you'd probably have to say Ipswich is the winnable one out of all of them, wouldn't you? Because of the fact that they're struggling to create chances and score goals. So can't see them get anything at Peterborough. I have to say I can't see them getting anything at Gills, and I can't see them getting anything at Sunderland. So then it comes down to the 2 home games.
Yeah, just said there Northampton are terrible away as well. But yeah, I don't think they've got enough in them. I mean, to not beat sort of Bristol Rovers, and Bristol Rovers coming away thinking they should have won that game just sort of shows how many goals they're conceding, how poorly they've played this season. So I think both of them are down for me. But that will change next week when we do our show.
Change every week. Change by the day.
But that wraps up today's sort of show, guys. I do apologise about the technical hitches and my son crying in the background. Has not been the most ideal night, but it's been amazing to be back. And first and foremost, just want to say thank you to Benjy for coming on.
Pleasure to be here.
It's been good to meet you, Benjy.
Very nice to meet you too.
And Matt, as always, thank you very much for your insight and your comments.
Pleasure as always.
Cool. And that wraps up today, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This is the first live show on the new channel, so the video will come straight on tonight. It'd be great to sort of push us to 200 subscribers. As I've just announced on Twitter as well, we smashed 1,000 during the middle of last week. And for 7 weeks worth of being live on there, guys, is phenomenal. So lots more to come. The giveaway will go live in the next sort of few days once the mugs arrive. Yeah, we're going to do 2 match passes and a home and away mug, which is in the post to Matt at the moment. Which one he's going to get is a mystery because he didn't mind. And we've also got the words and art giveaway, guys. Over 50 of you entered that, and that's going to be your favourite goal recreated as some digital art as well. The winner of that will be announced, I think, by the weekend. I've just got to speak to the artist as well. So it's really good to have some interaction. Keep getting involved on Twitter. Keep getting involved on YouTube. We've got loads more graphics coming out in the next few days as well. So thanks very much.
Have a good night.